020 722 42000.
Text 81333. Start your message with the word London.
BBC London 94.9.
Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. Taking your calls Monday to Thursday nights 10 till 1 on 0207 224 2000. Lots of reaction coming in about the afterlife and whether these headlines on the front pages today in relation to Peaches Geldof's death and the idea that she is now reunited with her mum, Paula Yates, was tasteless. More reaction on that coming through. Also about whether your noise complaints have been taken seriously when an MP who represents a very wealthy area of the country has raised his constituents' issues about noise in Parliament. Did that happen to you? And were your noise complaints taken seriously, or does it depend where you live? Plus, we're talking about the two sides to the smoking ban. 71% of people who believe that smoking in cars should be made a criminal offence if children are in the car, and indeed 71% also believe the government should go further than it does at the moment and ban people smoking in cars full stop. Plus, this other village, which is asking people to become non-smokers in their village. They want to become smoke-free, but they're going to ask. They're not going to enforce. There won't be any punishment. It'll be a voluntary system, a voluntary scheme. We're asking on the programme tonight whether that is the way forward and whether you'd actually quite like to see London to be a smoke-free city. 0207 224 2000 is our number. But joining us on the programme tonight, live in the studio, delighted to say that to review the day, we have Jonathan Davis, who's an economist, and Laura G. Thorne, who is the marketing manager of the 606 Club. Welcome to the show, both of you. It's very good to see you.
Thank you, Simon. Lovely to be here.
Yes, very, very excited to see you again in 2014.
Is this the first time this year? That's not true.
It is. Yes, I know. It's flown by.
Is that true?
Busy. It is
Seriously?
true. Yeah. No, I was back in the States in February, and the time has just flown by. And
gosh, it seems like yesterday.
It does, indeed.
So this was before Christmas?
Yes. Indeed.
Wow, gosh, so many things have happened since then.
Yes.
We'll find out more about the 606 Club and forthcoming events during this hour, because we're very happy to accept many of the amazingly good stars that appear on stage at the 606. Jazz orientated, but always very, very good late night themes, which is just what we want on this programme. Jonathan Davis is an economist, he's a wealth manager. He often predicts doom. The doom isn't happening yet, although perhaps it is. We just don't realise it.
Well, of course, if you're a Greek, you wouldn't be saying that.
No, that's true.
Much of the EU is in a generational depression. 60% youth unemployment. I mean, it's almost unbelievable, but it is happening right now. Indeed, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, just today, yet again, has reduced its forecast for economic growth for 2014 and beyond. I say yet again. I
thought in this country we've just had it raised from 2-something to 2.9.
I'm talking about global growth. I'll come to the UK in a moment. Global growth has been revised down yet again for, I think, the 7th time in the last 2 years. Yes, the UK is growing, and it grew last year, and it'll grow this year, and it'll grow next year, because there's a couple of major elections going on. So the government, as all governments do, is using our money to buy votes. You couldn't make it up, but that's what's happening. We have the emergency base rate since 5 years ago. Sorry, do you see an emergency? But we've still got the emergency rate. The government's borrowing £100 billion a year from our children to pretend that everything's okay. And then, of course, we've got the most Marxist policy that I've seen since Gordon Brown that came in last year in the name of Help to Buy. It's unbelievably inequitable, but it's a massive vote winner. So that's the reason why we have economic growth now.
That and much more, I'm sure, we'll go through during the hour as well. Finances and other matters, I'm sure, as well. Plus your reaction, please, on 81333. Start your message with the word London, and you could also email simon@bbc.co.uk. Laura, let's start with you. Indeed, I guess we've already got underway, but certainly in terms of the articles you brought in. This is interesting. This is from The Guardian, and this is about sexual aggression.
Or harassment, if you want to use that term or whatever, but yes. And it was sort of...
Tell us the story.
Well, the article is a follow-up to a video which some of your listeners may indeed have watched, because it's gotten quite a bit of traffic on the Guardian website, where basically the journalist Leah Green went out and decided to turn the tables on some unsuspecting men and basically try some harassment. These were real things that happened that women wrote in to her, said it happened to them. So she decided she would do it to some men who were not expecting that this was happening. They didn't realize they were being filmed. So she did some very, propositions, bar staff, guys on the street made various kinds of comments about their appearance and made intimate questions, and went up to two men and asked them if they had some kind of intimate erotic relationship, and this was all filmed for the cameras.
Is this allegedly, so just to make this very clear, is this allegedly the way that men behave?
And she said everything that she did was in response to an anecdote that had been reported to her by a woman who said she had experienced this very thing.
Right. Okay.
So this was just turning the tables. And so the video, I mean, people had different reactions to it. I thought it was laugh out loud hilarious, but there was a lot of criticism on the Guardian in the comments about it. Some who felt that it was in fact demeaning the actual legitimacy of harassment towards women by making it kind of a funny subject. And other criticisms included two wrongs don't make a right. In other words, going out to harass innocent men is not the way to prove the point that harassment is wrong.
Although I suppose it does shine a light on what men's reactions would be if some of their own behaviour was thrown back on them.
In a way...
Us, should I say, but I don't believe I've ever been... Well, maybe I don't know. I don't think I have.
Well, I am sure that you would never in any way be guilty of any of these things. In fact, I would say most men wouldn't be. Most people aren't.
This does sound quite extreme behavior.
Yes, but I think that, I see it from two sides, of the coin, because as much as I consider myself an absolute feminist, on the other hand, I have a really good sense of humor. And I do think we all need to lighten up sometimes and not take ourselves so seriously, and so, if a guy honks at you and makes a comment as you're walking down the road, I kind of take it, I always just took it as a compliment. You didn't see
it as something that would rile the feminist within?
Not at all, no. No, but I mean, I'm pretty direct. If I go up, I'll compliment someone, not in an offensive way, but I go up to total strangers, men, women, young, old, children, whatever, and I'll say, "Oh, you look lovely today," or "I like your hat," or whatever.
I've known, just to make this clear, I've known Laura G. Thorne probably about 18 months now. She's never said a word to me on that score. But anyway, we'll move on.
Professional decorum.
That's true. That's very true. Jonathan, what do you make of this? This idea that this particular person believed that she had to turn the tables on how men behaved in order for us to see how bad we potentially really are.
I watched the piece that was on the Guardian website, and I found it very interesting. It was mildly shocking. Not in the sense that, there's a catcall from a woman in a white van, being clearly the reverse of the standard, shall we say, situation. But it was shocking because it was one thing after another. In the space of 1 minute, there was about 10 or 15 sexist comments. So it kind of got a little bit boring after a few minutes. However, if this does shine a light on what certain sectors of the male community are doing, then good for her. Power to her elbow, and hopefully it will stop some men doing it.
I wonder how bad do things have to be for it to be wrong? Because there will be men listening who will say that their natural reaction if they see a woman who they find attractive is to either say something or behave, even if they can see that or even if it's in their mind. Is that something women understand, that men are just actually childish and often stupid and quite pathetic?
I'm not going to touch that with a barge pole, but what I will say is I think the line is this, and I think she does touch on it.
Can I ask you in a different way then? Do you have sympathy with men? If you see men behaving badly...
Okay, this is the key distinction. It depends on what their motivation is, because I think one of the points that comes out in this debate is that sometimes harassment is not actually about attraction, it's about power.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that is the key distinction here. And I think that's also to some extent why this role reversal didn't necessarily work, because sometimes women are literally intimidated by this because they feel there's an element of that's actually threatening. And sometimes that is true. And so that's not okay. And so if I perceive something like that coming across, then I don't think it's just like, oh, he's hapless, but he means well. If he's hapless and he means well, that's fine. And I think most people will go, oh, well, that's, he's a bit awkward there, but no harm meant.
The writer of this article says that as is usual, when men make inappropriate sexual remarks to me, I felt embarrassed. Do you have embarrassment, or can you just shine it off?
No, I don't think I feel embarrassed. But then I don't think that, I'm sure there's been things that people have gone through, women have gone through, that maybe I haven't on that level. So I'm sure there could be things that could be really, really awkward, and that would be embarrassing. No, I mean, I just kind of think it's about them, really, and just try not to be horribly rude and take away someone's dignity. I just try to laugh it off, really.
It's interesting. I wonder whether this has... See, I guess as an experiment, it is interesting, because I think most men, if they behave badly, and I know men who really do behave badly, and I'm trying and exclude myself from this, because I don't believe I do, but I do know men who do, particularly when they've had some drink inside them. And I do think it is interesting that this old saying of, they can dish it out, but they can't take it is actually quite clear. I mean, you must have been out on evenings or at functions where largely the financial community is full of men, and you've seen quite inappropriate behaviour that has made you feel uncomfortable.
I certainly have, and I'm sitting here listening to your excellent conversation, the two of you, and I'm thinking, do you know what? If we were talking about racism or homophobic comments, for example, it would be deemed absolutely unacceptable. And personally, I view sexist comments, whether meant to be witty or indeed, as Laura quite astutely says, actually exerting passive-aggressive power play. I personally also think this is absolutely unacceptable, and we should stamp it out.
Do you think it is? Does it exist, should I say, in the financial industry? We often hear that it is. Every so often we hear of very large lawsuits that have been put through for banks. We hear of the minute numbers of people like Nicola Horlick, who do obviously exceptionally well. Does it exist?
I'm quite sure it does extensively. I think the investment banking community in particular, I think there's so many. There's so much testosterone going through those dealing floors, which does not in any way, shape or form excuse it. But I think it's very... Excuse me?
It doesn't help it, of course.
It doesn't. I think it's a very sexist area. I think it's a very aggressive area. I think... it's exactly a power play. Clearly, if you can put the other person down, whether it be another guy or another woman, and it puts you on top in, say, the sales league, then, it helps you and it destroys the other people. It's just not nice, and it shouldn't happen.
We love your reaction on this at home. 0207 224 2000. The idea of actually a man finally seeing through the eyes of another woman what they dish out, and whether indeed other men can take it. And I'd love to hear maybe some of the worst, in ways that we are able to repeat on the radio, some of the worst behaviour that a man has shown towards you in the things he says, and particularly as the distinction was made by Laura, the idea that this isn't about necessarily hapless men who are trying to show that they think they find somebody attractive, but people who are using it to bully, to have control, about power. 81333, start your message with the word London. Jonathan Davis, Laura G. Thorne review the day. Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. Jonathan, can we talk about the curse, at least for the big four supermarkets, of the discounters?
Well, I remember talking to you about this a couple of months ago. This is actually one of my favourite subjects. There's a big news that in the first quarter of this year, the big four supermarkets have again lost market share. And now you've got the likes of Aldi and Lidl coming up close behind. It's very interesting. Some people will not quite appreciate this. Personally, I love Aldi. I have no financial professional relationship to them. I'm a customer.
Do you love the experience, or do you love the prices?
I love the quality and the prices. As I always say, you're getting Tesco.
Could they improve the experience for you?
No, the experience is just getting the weekly groceries. There's no particular experience there. It's Tesco Premium at Tesco value prices. I'm not interested in brands. I know a lot of people are. They've been brainwashed into it from the TV and the press for as long as they've been sentient. I tend to not be taken in by that kind of thing. I know a lot of people are. The point I was going to make was it's fascinating. Waitrose, of course, is just outside the Big Four. It's got 5% of the market in groceries now.
And it's growing, isn't it?
Aldi has 4.6%. And most people wouldn't know that. And you know, my wife and I, we smile about our local Aldi. We're one of their best customers in the sense that A, we're always telling people about how great it is, and B, we've been there since it opened, and it's absolutely fascinating. 2 points. One, 6 or 7 years ago when it first opened, you could easily get a space in the car park. Now you can hardly. And secondly, they're expanding the shop. It's lovely. Bring back capitalism, which is what Aldi and Lidl are doing.
What do you miss from the Big Four? Do you miss anything?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we get 90 to 95% of our groceries from Aldi, and then we walk down the road 300 yards to Sainsbury's to get the other 5 or 10%.
What do they stock that the others don't?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't say. But, you know, you're talking about a store.
This will be vintage champagne. This will be the finest smoked salmon. And we're going to hear it now. This will be the Russian vodka. And
on the contrary, you can get a lovely French wine for £3.50 a bottle. You can get Prosecco for £6 a bottle or less. You can get champagne for under £10. I'm doing an advert here for Aldi. It's not my intention. What I'm saying is, in times when the middle class is being stretched left, right and centre, this is the reason why Aldi and Lidl are going forward at great speed, because quite simply they're providing a quality food, quality groceries at a brilliant price. And that's what the people of Britain need.
There's a man from Aldi outside smiling with waving a checkbook at you. Laura Geetham,
I certainly hope so.
What is your shopping experience like? Have you departed from the Big Four supermarkets now? Or do you still shop at them?
Good. Well, goodness. I mean, my cat really has a thing for Sainsbury's cat food. And I have tried others. He is a bit fussy, so we have to go there. And it's also nearby my house.
So he's not a proprietary brand cat. He doesn't mind. He wants own brand, own label.
That's true, actually. Yes. No, he's very good that way. I mean, we've had the chat about value and so on. He does understand. He's conscious of that.
See, if you had a cat, Jonathan, that's exactly what your cat would be. It will be having the supermarket own brand.
My cat would eat what he's given. If he's hungry, he'll eat.
And my cat's name is Bilbo, by the way, just so everyone, because he's anyway, Bilbo. So I go to Sainsbury's. I like it. Also, my former father-in-law used to work for Sainsbury's for 30 years. There's a bit of an alliance there. But I love Marks and Spencer because I think the food quality is really lovely. I love going into Waitrose. It's a beautiful shopping experience. That's really nice too.
Why is it, just out of interest, and again, I'm doing this to try and cover all angles, and these aren't commercial, but it's interesting why you think that is a good shopping experience. What is good about the experience? Because in the end, they all sell groceries and they all have checkouts, and then you leave carrying your goods.
That's true. I will let me admit this. I don't really cook. I mean, I used to cook, but I've got it out of my system. I don't cook anymore. So I really go, if I'm going to have food in the house at all, it's going to be mostly ready meals or something really, really nice because I eat just for utility during the week. I work a lot. I just eat whatever's there. I don't fuss about it. So if I'm going to bring anything in from the shops, I want it to be really beautiful and something that tantalizes me and is absolutely perfect and exquisite. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that just the packaging and just looks beautiful and it's just top quality, because I'm only going to buy one or two things. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for utility. I'm wanting something that's just absolutely lovely.
You see, Jonathan will say that you're crazy because you've been fooled by the advertising of these wonderfully delivered. I mean, an advertiser once told me, somebody who worked in advertising. Oh, of course, you know what that means. But just to say, I think advertising was the wrong word. Somebody who works in advertising says, you ever walk around the house of somebody who works in advertising, you'll see very, very few proprietary brands. Most of them will be own brands because they know that it's all about the ad. It's all about the marketing.
Yeah.
When you consider Aldi's TV advertising? Your listeners will perhaps remember it. They have someone holding a premium brand which costs, say, £2, and then they have the Aldi non-brand which costs £1.20, but they look almost identical. I can tell you from years of experience, the quality is great. Anyone who hasn't tried it, I strongly recommend it.
81333, start your message with the word London. The reasons why this is being discussed include the idea that actually for the big four, Morrison's, Asda, Sainsbury's and Tesco's, is that right? The big four?
Yeah.
That they have lost market share to the discounters, which of course include Aldi and Lidl. Are there others? There probably are not others, really. I mean, there are other smaller.
Well, there used to be, but they've all been swallowed up by the big guys.
By the big ones. I remember in Camden there used to be a wonderful store called Victor Value. You go back far enough for Victor Value, and there were many others as well. And certainly when I was growing up on our street, we used to have McFisheries. Just, I think probably the last McFisheries in this country, which I think many people, certainly many listeners will remember with great fondness, probably went late 70s, early 80s. I don't know, when was the listeners will know, when was the last McFisheries that you can recall being in this city? Because they were considered great supermarkets, and I don't know where they went wrong, but presumably they turned into something else.
You're looking at me. I've never even heard of them.
You've never heard of McFisheries? Maybe they didn't make their way north of the border.
I guess
they should
not.
have done with a name like McFisheries.
There you go.
To be perfectly honest.
Exactly.
0207 224 2000. So far we've spoken about sexual bad behaviour from men, and this one particular lady who carried out this experiment by doing it back to men to see how they dealt with it, and also the supermarkets that are losing share to the discounters. Now, Laura, before we get into the headlines, the 606 Club.
Yes.
Tell us what is happening there at the moment.
Well, there's been a lot of fun stuff going on, and I'm trying to think of where to even begin, because we've got coming up this summer, first of all, I know it's a couple months away, but we're doing the Fulham Palace Jazz on the Lawn event. So that's going to be in the summertime, where you can sit out on the lawn at Fulham Palace, beautiful historic venue, and we're going to have some great stuff there. We've got that going on. We're participating in this new Hammersmith and Fulham Arts and Culture Fest, which is happening in June. So we've got some exciting new stuff. We're going to be doing a pop-up event in Hammersmith, so stay tuned for that. We've been doing a Singers in the Round. It's a new kind of programming idea for singer-songwriters with Sarah Gillespie, whom I know you know
Sarah's
and
been
love.
in. Yes, indeed.
We absolutely adore her. She's one of the smartest ladies I know and very talented. And then we're doing with our friend Haley Sanderson from Strictly Come Dancing. She's also doing a night. We love her, and so she's doing a night as well. In fact, we've had Purdy, who was on here. She was doing with Haley.
So we get most of our great acts from your place. We're very lucky with all of them.
It's starting to seem like a bit of a bit of a lazy daisy there. So, lazy Susan or whatever that is. We just had a lot of we're mixing it up more. We're doing some more kind of fun stuff. We're actually going to be doing a comedy night in May. We're just working on programming that right now. So lots of fun stuff, and it's all on our website, of course.
You'll have to get in touch with Stephen Allen, who appears on us. He's a very funny man, very good comedian. So maybe we'll put you two in touch, and then we can give back. We can give back to the 606. Yes, it is all on the website. Give us details of the 606 Club website.
606club.co.uk.
I think we mentioned before, as we started this out, that Jonathan, your job is to keep people's money, and if they can, or if you can, to make it grow. Is that a struggle this time of the economic cycle?
No, it's a funny thing, because I know this will sound strange to people, but actually what's happening in the economy is often vice versa to what's happening in investment markets. You'll remember, of course, 2007, when there was a mania and nothing could go wrong. That was the peak in the stock market. And then 2009, when there was a depression in the air, that was the bottom of the stock market. So, no, it doesn't really work that way.
All right. We had someone, but we're going to have it after these. We got some thoughts coming through on McFisheries, which is wonderful. Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9, taking your calls Monday to Thursday nights 10 till 1 on 0207 224 2000. Our guests in the studio this hour to review the day, Jonathan Davis, who's an economist, and Laura G. Thorne, who is the marketing manager of the 606 Club. More from them, more from you on the way. Before that, at 11:30, Valley Fontaine has the headlines.
Thanks, Simon. The Culture Secretary, Maria Miller, says she's devastated. She's let her constituents down over the handling of an inquiry into her expenses. Writing in a local newspaper in Basingstoke, where she's an MP, she says the past 16 months during which her claims were being investigated have been difficult. She's now under growing pressure to resign, though she's apologised for overclaiming on her mortgage interest payments and has repaid nearly £6,000. Officers investigating serious assaults on 3 women at the Cumberland Hotel in central London on Sunday arrested 4 people this evening. 3 men in Islington were arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, and a woman was arrested on suspicion of handling stolen goods. A 20-mile-an-hour speed limit will be introduced on roads in the City of London in July after its Planning and Transport Committee voted in favour of the measure. Officials estimated that the new limit will reduce casualties by 7%. And now sport. Chelsea are through to the semi-finals of the Champions League. They overturned a 3-1 defeat against Paris Saint-Germain from the first leg to win 2-0 at Stamford Bridge tonight. It ended 3-3 on aggregate, putting Chelsea through on the away goal rule. And London's weather, a dry night with clear skies, just the chance of some mist with a low of 2 degrees Celsius, that's 36 degrees Fahrenheit. That's headlines. There'll be a full update at midnight.
BBC London 94.9.
It's quite a personal story, isn't it?
It is. Last year we lost our mum, dad,
a cab driver in
Winnie
London, his daughter had leukemia.
My grandmother suffers from Alzheimer's.
And so why 15 marathons?
I just love the distance and I love running.
And there they go.
Streaming past.
Probably 10 wide as they run around Cottyside.
Wonderful atmosphere on Tower Bridge.
Most incredible day in London's year.
Very exciting, very emotional.
26.2 miles of stories.
I feel really proud of him whenever I see him. It's like, oh, that's my dad.
Told by around 36,000 storytellers.
It is the most exciting day in London.
The supporters in London are the best.
Are you sitting comfortably?
I said, one day I will do this, and this is that day.
The London Marathon.
I've been recovering from alcoholism, and this is this day. That is an extraordinary story.
Live coverage from 8 a.m. on Sunday. Call 020 722 42000.
Text 81333. Start your message with the word London.
BBC London 94.9.
Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. We were talking just before the headlines about the big 4 supermarkets who are losing market share to some of the discounters in this country. Pop your headphones on because we got Laura G. Thorne and Jonathan Davis here to review the day. Jackie is in Ascot. Evening to you, Jackie.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, you know about McFisheries.
Yes, my father worked for them.
Right. What did he do? Do you recall?
He was actually the manager of the fish side of things,
right.
But they also went into fruit and vegetables as well. And this would have been late 70s, early 80s.
And which branch? The branch in Ascot?
No, Bracknell.
Oh, in
and
Bracknell.
And they actually had the head office was in Bracknell as well.
Right. Now, for those people who are not familiar with McFisheries, which indeed probably includes both of our guests, I know with Jonathan, but Laura, you hadn't heard of them either.
No, I had not.
Do you recall McFisheries, Jackie? Are you old enough?
Yes.
Surely not. That's not true.
I know, 21 again this year. It's terrible.
Happy birthday for this year.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
just because they were considered
it.
to be high quality stores, weren't they?
They were, because they were purely the food convenience side of things, along with fine fare and things like that. But they were certainly in the high street in Bracknell, and my father worked for them for a good 10 years or so.
Do you recall when the last one would have shut? Or certainly the one in Bracknell, where that would that would have closed.
One closed down roughly, I would have said probably early 80s,
yes.
And the head office certainly went by 1983, 84.
Great shame when that went. I know when the one up the high street, we knew the rock was about to set in when they renamed themselves Mac Market. Do you remember that? They became Mac Market, and then I think they became something like Gateway. Or ours did anyway.
No, because there are actually still a few McFishers around, and that's
there aren't.
I think there is a couple.
Really?
Yeah. I saw them way back in the beginning of 2000. I'm sure, because we were doing some things where I used to work and bits and pieces. So
that I would love to return to.
But as I say, if you've just put MACK then Fisheries, but as I say, there is still something I'm sure beginning of 2000, 2001, they were still floating around somewhere.
I will try and find them because I will. In fact, I'll drag Jonathan Davis kicking and screaming to a branch of McFisheries and try.
Well, with a name like that, it sounds like they come from Scotland.
They should have been there. Jackie, thank you so much for the call.
Okay, bye.
Bye. 0207 224 2000 is our number. 81333. Start your message with the word London. Laura G. Thorne and also Jonathan Davis review the day this hour. Laura, can we talk about this is a sketch piece in the Telegraph you brought in about claimants and possibly some tougher sanctions coming in. Tell us the story.
I thought this was hilarious. In fact, the last line of it, can I read it just directly?
Yeah, of course
because
you can.
It's so beautifully done. Mr. Duncan Smith, I think we know who this is referring to, may say he's ended the something for nothing culture, but the something for nothing culture secretary sails blithely on, which I thought was beautiful.
It is indeed.
And I've been sort of just,
this is very, actually, can we read some more? Because there's a quiz here, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
And the quiz questions are very simple. And I'm going to, in fact, why don't we just do this in the studio? Because I don't know the answers and probably neither do you. Oh, is it? I'll just cover them up for me. So this is the thing, the quiz. And don't forget, this is from the Telegraph, which is arguably a newspaper which leans to the right. The following quotes, numbered 1 to 5, are taken from a speech Ian Duncan Smith gave in London today. His subject was the government's success in clamping down on people who exploit the system. In each case, can you guess whether the Work and Pension Secretary was referring to A, a benefits claimant, or B, Maria Miller, of course, as you heard there, the lady who's come under much scrutiny on her own expenses. Number 1, we are making sure that if somebody fails to meet their responsibilities, they will face the consequences. Is that about a benefits claimant or Maria Miller?
What do you think?
I would say that's about a benefits claimant. Should we have a look? A or B? A, we're right.
Yes.
2, a robust set of sanctions for the most serious offences. We must assume that must be a benefits claimant too. A, yeah, we're right. 3, ensuring fairness for the taxpayer who funds the process.
Now, that must be Maria Miller, surely.
No, well, there we are. That indeed is also a benefits claimant.
You're kidding me.
4, we must do the right thing by those whose contributions fund the system. That is surely only fair to them.
Mm-hmm. And guess what?
That's A as well, isn't it? That's a benefits claimant. So we have ended the something for nothing culture. A, benefits claim. So none of these were about Maria Miller.
No.
That's the worst quiz I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Right. And just say congratulations. If you manage to guess them all correctly, you win £5,800 reduced down from £45,000. What a great article.
Yeah,
So what do you make of this
funny
whole debate regarding Maria Miller's expenses? And there's obviously a debate about whether she should stand down or indeed be fired. And this great outpouring of anger from some selections of the electorate about the way that obviously it's one treatment for one side of the debate and another for the other.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I thought this article was so perfect, because that's kind of, I tend to come back around, circle, navigate to the same issues over and over, and it's about fairness. And I think that this is, pointing this up once again, how unfair things are, and how this campaign by Mr. Duncan Smith against people who are genuinely disadvantaged because of shenanigans at the very top. These people are not just by accident in this predicament. We like to demonize them and say it's all their fault, but it's not all their fault. There's things going on in society that have been deliberately set up to make them worse off while other people are getting better off. And this is a perfect example of this. And, I think everyone's a bit bored by the expenses scandal at this point. It's so ho-hum. Is this a surprise to anyone that this is going on? And then people act shocked. It seems like it's just business as usual.
One of the, just before we go to Jonathan about this, one of the quotes here is quite interesting because it talks about the press conference afterwards, and he said he consented to speak to 3 reporters from TV. Each asked whether, when it came to robust sanctions for people who claim money to which they weren't entitled, it was one rule for ministers and another for the unemployed. Patiently, he said they said he gave the same answer. The Prime Minister has made his position clear, and I support the Prime Minister. And the paper notes that he says the Prime Minister, not Mrs. Miller. And This writer says, I particularly liked it when he was interviewed by the 3rd reporter. I must ask you about Maria Miller, she said. And he said, you don't have to. Is how it ended. Jonathan, what do you make of this? This obviously is a great concern for the government because many of the backbenchers are saying this is damaging their election chances. What do you make of the whole mess that seems to have happened here?
Laura is absolutely correct that effectively we're not just looking at Maria Miller or the Conservatives, we're looking at politicians who were found out a few years ago with the expenses in the Telegraph. Incidentally, it was the Telegraph who told the British people that the politicians were gaming the system, were stealing from us. And it's not just Tories, it's Labours, Liberal Democrats. Do you know who the biggest winners out of this? It's not the incumbent politicians. It's certainly not the people. It's the UK Independence Party. They're the biggest winners out of this because Farage, no doubt, will be in every second statement he makes. He will be repeating something of the order of, the existing politicians are rubbish, give us a chance. And that will resonate with the public.
Has there ever been a time, though, and I'm trying to think back, and obviously my awareness started during the Thatcher regime. I was probably just before Thatcher, the last Labour government before that, when we were in crisis. I don't remember enough. In fact, we just had a delight at the candlelit dinners we were having, thinking we were quite some luxuriously wealthy family. But I'm trying to recall a time when politicians were taken seriously and with respect. There's always been people who have admired some politicians, but largely the political class has never really been loved in this country.
They may not have been loved, but they were certainly hugely respected. I didn't see it myself at the time, but I've seen the programmes, the historical programmes of the likes of the predecessors to Sir Robin Day, who were interviewing the politicians of the day, and they were so deferential.
Oh yes, what would you like to tell the nation, Prime
and
Minister?
Thank you so much for spending time coming on this national television show so that you can sell the people your wares.
Yes.
But of course, thankfully, on the whole, I say.
So is that why they were more respected?
Well, yes, I think it was because the media basically put them on a pedestal. And I was going to say, on the whole, that doesn't happen now, but actually I hesitated because I think, unfortunately, still too much. There are still national broadcasters who still put these guys on a pedestal. Thank goodness for people like Andrew Neil who take the Michael out of them.
In terms of your own experience, Laura, in terms of the politicians, I wonder whether you have, like some, I guess, tarred all politicians with the same brush, or you can see that there are genuinely people who are in politics, who are in Westminster, who are there not for themselves. They're not self-serving politicians. They're genuinely there because they want to improve people's life chances.
I do believe that, actually, and I think that's part of how people are disenfranchised, is that argument that, oh, it's all just terrible. You know, I don't believe it's all just terrible, and I don't think everyone is equal. I think that you have to, it makes it harder as someone who wants to be enfranchised to participate, because, we can't be watching people all the time, and it's so hard to really know who you're voting for. I mean, I was a great supporter of Barack Obama. And I volunteered in every election since President Clinton, actually, I think it was 1992. And, and it's been a mixed bag. Some things have turned out better than others. But I think that's our only shot. I mean, they say
next time round you're going to get either a Bush back or a Clinton back, aren't you? You're going to get Jed or Hillary. You're going to be the same family repeated, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a perfect system. What do they say? Democracy is the worst system except for all the other ones. Yes. And I have vociferous arguments with all kinds of people who say, well, the best way now to respond to what's going on is to sit it out and refuse to participate and just say, I'm not voting. It's so corrupt. But I don't know where that really gets us, because the people that do participate are going to make the rules.
Text and emails coming through. John in Wandsworth says, Simon, your misandry is amazing. Gosh, one day I get told I'm misogynistic, and now I'm showing my misandry. Constantly portraying women as victims of men makes them believe that whenever they do similar to men, be it sexist comments to or about men, touching men inappropriately, violence towards men, etc., it's somehow okay, says Johnny Wandsworth. I hope that wasn't the impression you got, because it certainly wasn't what we were saying. But I think the facts probably are, in most people's experiences, there are more men who act inappropriately towards women than there are women who act inappropriately towards men. I couldn't give you the fact on that, but that's my own life experience. I imagine it's probably your experience, Laura?
Well, again, I come back to that same thing, which is that because of their physical size and stature, a man is in a position, to threaten someone in a way that a woman typically isn't. Now, women are sometimes violent towards men. This happens. But I think typically it turns to be the other way around because the woman is just more diminutive.
And also, certainly up until relatively recently, when there's been attempts to get the workplace balanced up, there were often more men in senior roles who obviously not only had the physical power, but also the emotional and position of authoritarian power as well. This is Lawrence. From SW1, he says, aka Pimlico, depending on whether you're a estate agent or not, I guess. It is interesting that Sainsbury's based their cashback difference vouchers on Tesco and Asda competitors and not on Aldi and Lidl price comparisons, says Lawrence.
Well, they would, wouldn't they? Because they wouldn't have a look in because Aldi and Lidl are 30, 40, 50% cheaper.
This is June in Milton Keynes. Says someone, there used to be a McFisher's in Kilburn High Road until the mid-70s. My nan used to buy there weekly. It was really good food and high-end, but good value at the same time. I remember they did lovely dressed crab, says June in Milton Keynes. Further away from the coast to get crab, I guess you probably couldn't be in Milton Keynes. 81333, start your message with the word London. 0207 224 2000 is our number. Jonathan, can we return back to you? This is the news of one of your favourite ideas from the government. Hope for buy-to-let landlords denied a mortgage in their pension years as lenders considered loosening age limit. Just explain this story, because there's been lots of pension-based stories, particularly this idea that you can use the money for what you will, and some are concerned that this may skew the property market or indeed the Lamborghini market. But what is this story particularly telling us? Yeah,
it's saying that buy-to-let is a huge money spinner for the banks and building societies to lend on. So they're far happier to lend on buy-to-let than actually for people to put down a deposit and occupy the property themselves. But what's particularly I call it frightening about what we're hearing is that I think it's called the Mortgage Works, which is the buy-to-let lending arm of the Nationwide Building Society. It is now letting people borrow for buy-to-let up to the age of 70, but get this, the mortgage can last 35 years.
Right. So you can pass it down to your children to continue to pay off, or indeed your grandchildren. How lovely.
Indeed. Isn't that frightening that the state has intervened in the housing market to such an extent now that the lenders feel so secure that they will be prepared to have a loan from a 105-year-old.
It gives other examples of one bank, the Aldermore Bank, that the maximum age you can be at the end of a mortgage term is 85. Lloyd's is got its maximum at 75, but this is obviously remarkable that it could theoretically mean you can have a mortgage term beyond your 100 years.
I'm all for a free market. The problem is, a lady in her 60s recently had a big discussion with me about the market helped my property rise over the years, and if people didn't get in, that's their problem. What she doesn't get is that there hasn't been a free market in real estate for decades because the state has intervened time and time again. That's what I said at the outset of the top of the hour there, that the most Marxist policy I've seen since Gordon Brown is help to buy. It's the next generation who are funding the current people to buy property. This is beyond outrageous. And I tell you, it's going to lead us to a place that it's just going to be so bad. It's divisive societally, and it's going to hurt the economy in the long run big time.
Just a quick question before we go back to Laura on this. One of the things that many people have obviously been convinced and secured in the knowledge of is the idea that there is indeed an arm that is looking out for what the banks are doing. I think it recently changed, and it was the FSA, was it?
It's now the Financial Conduct Authority.
Yeah. That's right. Where will they be in all this? Because presumably they would not necessarily think it's a good idea, as much as they didn't like 125% mortgages. They won't necessarily like a mortgage term that goes beyond your 100 years.
Well, my understanding is, in fact, the Bank of England have been handed responsibility for stability in the housing market and mortgage lending. And the Bank of England has been making noises that they're uncomfortable about this, that and the other. But you know what? They're not actually doing anything. And I suspect that they will not do anything because... the Bank of England is part of the machinery of government, and the machinery of government wants higher and higher house prices because it's a vote winner.
Will it eventually come unstuck? Or can this go on for decades?
No, it can definitely not go on for more than a few years, in my opinion. You and I have discussed in the past, Simon, and I would say to you that at some point in the relatively near future, the UK is going to go back into recession. It's not going to be internally created, because the government is doing whatever it can to pull those levers and push those buttons to get economic growth. But so that's internal creation. What it's going to be, people need to get this. There is going to be another global economic shock. We had one in 2008. I believe that was just the hors d'oeuvre of the bursting of a 20 or 30 year bubble. There's going to be the main course in due course. It's going to be externally created. Do you know the one thing that the policymakers will not be able to do for the first time in 4.5 decades the next time we have a recession?
They can't lower interest rates, can they?
They can lower it, but they can't slash it because it's already near rock bottom. And that's the thing that's going to knock us all out.
Laura G. Thorne, obviously, you don't hail from this country, for which we welcome you hugely, of course, every time you come in. But our obsession with property, with bricks and mortar, must come as a surprise when you first arrived in this country.
Well, I don't know, because first of all, I'm not a homeowner, and I wasn't a homeowner back in the States either.
But that's the point, isn't it? Many people are perfectly happy never being a homeowner, whereas here we think there's a dream of being a homeowner.
Well, so I was glued to this channel in America called Home and Garden Television, and one of my favorite shows was called Design to Sell, which is where the designer comes in and helps property owners fix up their homes. They can get the most money.
This is in America. We have one every morning when I wake up at about 11 o'clock. There's something on Homes Under the
Hammer.
Right.
Homes Under the Hammer.
Yeah, so in America, there's a very flourishing industry going on in around real estate, for sure. Maybe not to the extent. No, you're right. It is very. There is definitely an ardent, like, you want to be an owner. And
I mean, there was a time when the Americans were just giving back the keys to the house.
Certainly, and during the mortgage crisis, I think people were realizing they were just, as they say, too far underwater to make it worth their while. But I mean, which is what strikes me from listening to Jonathan speak about this. It sounds, wait a second, isn't this very similar to where we were 5 years ago?
It's exactly the same.
And at the time, I thought it was lunacy. I actually had a good friend whose very good friend was a mortgage broker. And I remember being at some social function. He was talking about all the loans he was giving out. And in fact, he was saying, well, we could get a loan to buy our place. And I'm like, how is that possible? I know I don't qualify. Oh, it doesn't matter. Don't worry. There's nothing down. And
the liar loans.
Oh, my God. And at the time, I knew it was just madness, because anyone who has any sense knows that it's madness. So I'm flabbergasted by some of these policies. I don't understand. And I also think that if we're using basically our properties as investment vehicles and cash machines, this cannot be sustainable.
It has sustained for 40 or 50 years. And the great British people have been brainwashed into believing that it's literally impossible for real estate prices, for house prices to fall. And so far, barring, of course, what happened in 2008, even in London, Simon and Laura, even in London, house prices fell over 20%. Of course, they rapidly came back up again because they slashed interest rates and they bailed out the banks. The next time, they will not be able to slash interest rates. People should consider what that is likely to do to the businesses, to borrowers in a recession.
Could they go negative? I.e., the bank will begin to charge you for having money in the bank.
The answer to the question is the policymakers can do whatever they want. I would say to you it's extremely unlikely, because if we in the West are, as I say on Twitter, #turning Japanese, they went into a deflationary depression for over 20 years, of which they're just coming out of. And their base rate went down to 0.1%. So even in a deflation for 20 years, they didn't have negative interest rates. I strongly suspect we will not have negative interest rates.
Text and emails coming through. This is from Joan, who says, wasn't it a mistake to take into consideration the earnings of both partners instead of just the husband when it comes to mortgages, from the point of view of society, family life, and the ability to own your own home? I mean, it did change, didn't it? Because it used to be 3 times income. Then you could include your partner at, was it a 4.5 joint? Maybe 5?
Well, indeed. 5 times joint, quite remarkable. And you think about the big picture. 2 generations ago, one, generally, man's income brought up a family. Now it's 2 people's income and huge amounts of debt to bring up a family. Presumably. Excuse me?
And that's why, because of this kind of change in the economy.
Because of 30 years of easy lending, and it was brought back again with Help to Buy. That's why house prices have risen. I'm all for the free market. What I'm against is the banks and building societies lending whatever the heck they want to lend, in the full knowledge that if and when it messes up, the banks will get bailed out. That's not capitalism.
David from Wembley, who describes himself as exiled in Luton, says, complicated history of McFisher's, but it ended in 1979. I just about remember them. I think there was one in the middle of the parade of shops in Preston Road, which is in northwest London, station side, which then took on the guise of its successors. International, which became Gateway, which became Summerfield. Gosh, that sounds about right, actually. Thank you, David. This is on the text, 81333. Start your message with the word London. Noosh in Crouch End says, I relied on Aldi when living as a student in Germany in the early 90s. I got everything but meat from there. In those days, it was really rough and ready, crates stacked on the floor. But how could you say no to a shallow crate of kiwis for 4 pence? Probably you couldn't.
Probably you couldn't. I can tell you that the quality of their produce is as good as anywhere you'll find now. It's not pile it high and sell it cheap. On the contrary, for those who have not ever visited an Aldi store.
Or indeed others that are available like Lidl. Right, Jonathan Davis, if people want to find out more about you and about what you do, how can they?
JonathanDavisWM.com.
Which stands for Wealth Manager. Predictions, of course, and regular information comes from his website. Laura G. Thorne, obviously the 606 Club. It's a great spring, as you say. Some wonderful summer plans coming up as well for the lawn at, was it Fulham Palace?
Yes, it's a Fulham Palace. That's right. Yeah, we did it last year. It was wonderful. In fact, we've done it for several years, but last time it was especially good because the weather was so glorious. So,
of course, you had a very good summer.
Oh my goodness,
Let's
it was
pray
beautiful.
for another one.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about the 606 Club, how can they do it?
Yeah, please definitely go to the site at 606club.co.uk, and please join us on Twitter as well. It's at 606 Club. We have a lot of fun on our Twitter feed.
Wow, that sounds enticing. Actually, I do follow you already. What was that? Of course you do. You do have a lot of fun. Right, after the news, more of your calls on the topics of the day, plus indeed your reaction to what you've heard in the last hour. 0207 224 2000. Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. And Valley Fontaine has the headlines on the way next.